Peace YouTube, this is Flurboon coming to you today for another topic of discussion. Check on in. I don't know, I have a lot of reflection on my camera. Check on it. We're going to discuss UFOs. I'm here today. I wonder why I can't see anything on my camera. Sometimes my camera gets a little iffy. Sorry, family. All right. Peace, peace to the east, the west, the north, and the south. Check on in. Hey, Sensei. I miss you, Mama Bear. Where have you been? I want to take this off. I don't like this on my hair. Peace. Check on in. Grand Rising. Okay, so we're going to get into a different conversation, a little more light-spirited. This is my 17th day of my nano water fast, feeling magnificent. So a lot of wonderful revelations have come in, and part of that comes with having a discussion about UFOs. So check on in. I'm sorry, my camera, I need to get one of those camera holders. I'm actually in a car. I'm one of those people who is like steadfast on not getting new stuff because I just don't want to. Ah, there we go. Check out in. Oh, New Orleans in the house. My Creole famille. PA's in the house. What's good? Anyway, so we're gonna get in a conversation about UFOs and why there has been a rising of UFO um, uh, sightings. You did a 40-day water fast. Good for you. You're doing great. Thank you, Deandra. I'm grateful that you. It's nice to speak to someone else who's actually done similar type of fasting. It's absolutely phenomenal. I think I really didn't know. Do you lose weight when you fast? Yeah, you should. You do. You should. Beautifully, but you should. It's part of shedding. It's shedding aspects of yourself that are no longer serving your highest purpose. But we're going to get into the UFOs. We could talk about fasting any other time. So I want to get into the discussion about UFO sightings being on the rise and why is that. So I think a couple people were asking me within the last couple days, saying why is it that certain people will see a lot of UFOs and others won't even witness it. But there's been a general consensus that the majority of people now are accepting a lot of people that you're in contact now, which normally a couple years ago were not in sync with even thinking UFOs existed or even weren't even necessarily, you know, accepting of having the conversation about UFOs. I kind of think you were a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, or I just thought it was so out there, you know what I mean? Kind of like the concept of quantum physics. Kind of thought that the conversation was beyond their perimeter of perspective or overstanding, right? So there has been a rise in UFO witnessing. And why that is occurring is because the awareness is heightened amongst most people, meaning the conscious state of the reality that we're coexisting in. Because remember, even though we seem like we're separated, we're all coexisting in the same holographic reality. And if that's being said, you have to understand and understand that there's a oneness that we collectively come from. So almost like the universe has its own perspective, and it gets its perspectives by sending out sparks, which we represent, and those sparks are giving intel on our own perspective of how we see in our within our perimeters of our spectrum of light. I know that seems so far bent out there, but that's basically what we are. We're sparks of consciousness from a oneness that wants to see from different perspectives. So we're all one. So at the end of the day, we all think we're separate. You live on your side of the fence and I live on my side of the fence, but inevitably we are coming collectively from the same spark. Okay, from the same oneness. And some of you call it God, Goddess, Allah, Christ, whatever you want to, whatever you want to name it. It's simply just oneness, and that's all it is. It isn't a being. It's ambiguous. It has zero sex. It's not related to anything that we in this physicality, in this avatar, can really ever truly realize. You know what I mean? It's a oneness that we all are. So every bit of spectrum of light that we're representing, every spark that we represent, that we take ownership in this physicality, is actually just a reflection of other fractions of light, perspectives of light. So there isn't anything that's wrong, even with a clone or with those beings that are bioengineered to a certain degree. They themselves are still perspectives of light. Okay, so they may not come from necessarily from source, but if man created it, it still comes from source. You know what I mean? If the creator of something comes from a highest form of creation, then it's still part of the creator, the inevitable creator above, right? Okay. So, I want to talk about the recent spikes of UFO activity in the skies. We're having heightened amount of activity and particularly in parts of Pennsylvania, in Delaware, and in Washington D.C. Now, DC is not a stranger to getting heightened amount of UFO activity. Obviously, the presidents always reside, well, not your President Bush. I mean, I said Bush. I think I'm in the wrong timeline. Not your President Trump, because he feels he's too good. He lives in towers of gold. So he thinks he's too good to live in the White House. He only visits the White House for a minute. You're an hour north of Philly. Okay, you should be getting we're getting intel of spikes of UFO activity going on in Delaware, Washington, D.C., and parts of Pennsylvania. Okay, so why is this happening? Because the conscious state of collective consciousness, a conscious state, that's kind of redundant, right? The conscious state of awareness with the hive mind is becoming more heightened in awareness. And because we're becoming more aware of our shared collective perspectives, there is an awareness of something beyond the perimeters of what we just see every day on this earth plane. Okay, when we were limited consciously and we were more fractured and disconnected from source, that is when we had a hindrance in being able to physically, visually be able to witness what we consider to be UFOs. Now, UFOs come in all different packages. Not one is the same, okay? So you have UFOs that travel interdimensionally, which most UFOs do. You have UFOs that travel galactically, what we consider to be galactic vessels that travel in and out of different galaxy or star systems. Okay, now usually sometimes it's one and the same, is that if it has the potentiality to travel interdimensionally, that means that most likely it has the potentiality to travel intergalactically. Now, that being said, what would make a craft be unable to do both? Meaning that it is more grounded in physicality. There are other planets that are similar to us with people who are not as necessarily, or beings, let's say beings because we're people, beings that are not necessarily more heightened. Even though we consider extraterrestrials to be more advanced than us, there are planets that are about to the same degree of conscious state of being as we are. Okay, so they may have a little more capability as far as interstellar traveling, but doesn't mean they're so heightened where their consciousness supersedes us to a greater degree. And meaning that that's the only ones, hold on. Those would be the vessels that would be more bound to physical perimeters, physical binding, meaning that they're more dense. They have physical ships rather than sentient ships. Sentient ships have a more permeable kind of a more permeable type of material that it's made with, meaning that it's not made of a material, it's a material that's kind of gelatinous a little bit, or it's more porous or more more there's ships that are made of like what, Barry Littleton, big up to Barry Littleton, more porous, more built like mushrooms that are grown in a laboratory, almost like a fungi, and they're more like permissible to travel in and out of like aqua states, like going into the waterways. Okay, those are ships that can travel underneath the oceans, which many ships do. And actually, there's more fleets of UFOs underneath our feet in the oceans than we would see and would be able to witness up in the sky. There are ships that are made that are interdimensionally made, so they're made of like a light, of fractured light, like spectrums of light. Even though they hold some physicality, they that's why they're able to permeate in and out of dimensions, because it isn't a physical, like what we consider to be so concrete, so physical, like metal or glass, that it's unable to permeate. It just changes spectrum of light and it goes in and out of different dimensions. Okay, then we see ships up in the sky, and not all ships up in the sky are necessarily galactic or intergalactical ships, because those could be man-made or reverse engineer ships that governmental agencies have had access to and have been creating since the 40s, when we had a lot more UFO activity, activity as far as crashes, Roswell, Area 51, which are not really the areas. Those are just areas you know about, because those are the only ones that we talk about most often. There are a lot more crafts that have been crashed here that you haven't heard anything about. Back in the 40s and 30s, you just heard them as like, sometimes if you see a sighting, they would say it was a hot air balloon. They would make all these, crazy, insinuate that it was something other than obviously something that was outer worldly. Okay, so not all crafts that you see above. Sometimes the triangular crafts aren't necessarily from beings. Now, the triangular crafts are real, and they are usually extraterrestrial as far as galactic ships, but they are not always necessarily from extraterrestrials. They are sometimes, especially the triangular ones lately. Why do you think they have the stealth bombers that look triangular now? Because they've been reverse engineering the technology that they came upon in the 30s and 40s, and they mastered it. So sometimes what you think is a UFO is just a governmental ship flying up in the air, and it doesn't necessarily have interdimensional capabilities, so you get to see it tangibly. Okay, so that's not necessarily, it can be considered a UFO, because a UFO just means unidentified flying object, right? Okay, so sometimes you'll see that, but other than that, you have ships made of all different types of material, some otherworldly and some material that's actually engineered here from Earth's minerals that are created here. And again, there are ships that are grown in laboratories, or grown as like plants or like mushrooms. And Barry Littleton is good into that. He kind of talks about how the ships are porous. Many of the ships sometimes are sentient, and they are sometimes grafted from the same material of the pilots themselves, the cosmonauts. So big up to EBE. EBE is also the cosmonaut that I talk about. That is, one of the Andromedans that I personally am in contact with. She had manned, well, female. She was a cosmonaut that traveled in a ship that was sentient, that was actually was part of her DNA. She shared the same DNA of her ship. That's also why she wore bones, which bones are crystals, forms of crystals. That's why you saw bones, connected to her first eye and around her perimeter of her face, because they actually drive the ship. She actually was able to control and I don't want to use man, because it always says man a ship, and it's what wants to come out of my mouth, but she's not manning a ship. What she's doing is she's flying the ship with her first eye, with the bones on her face. It looked like bones, but remember, bones are crystals, okay? Usually I have crystals. EB, I've shown pictures of her many times, and because the ship is made with some of the same biological component of her own physicality, it has a sentient kind of sentient kind of sentient type of value. Okay, so you can only, you know, I remember, like I said, there were people coming to me saying some of them weren't seeing, and they were wondering why they weren't seeing any ships. You know, some of them are part of our family, and they wonder to themselves, like, Flurburn, you know, I've been down with you for years. I have never witnessed a ship myself. And I absolutely said to them, you can only witness to the perspective of what you are. You can only see from the perspective of what you are. If your consciousness is limited, and limited does not mean you're lower or you're lesser, meaning that your consciousness is still in a position of limitation, meaning your belief systems, maybe you were raised in Christianity, very stoic, and you've kind of gotten out of that, but you still have some of that intrinsic value of your belief system still kind of like still, you know, autopiloting your state of thoughts. It disallows for you a lot of times to take on a higher field perspective of something outside as far as galactically, or something that, you know, even the perspective of seeing spirits can be out of someone's realm of overstanding. Some people see spirits, and you say to yourself, how come they can see it and I can kind of feel it, but I don't see it? Is because you can only see to the degree of what you are. Okay, so if your consciousness and you have heightened awareness, you will see ships, and you will see ships because they match the frequency of who and what you are. Okay, so you will be standing side by side, and your homie could be standing next to you, and your homie could be sitting there looking at the same sky as you are, same position in the sky, but you will witness a ship and see it clear as day, see its movement, see it permeating in and out of the clouds, see it pop in, we call it popper, you know, the blinkers, pop it in and out of different dimensions. You can see it bleeping in and out. You can actually sometimes see the residue or the little spirals that come sometimes from jumping in and out of our different gates that are actually in the sky, different perimeters where they utilize as stargates to jump in and out of our reality. You can actually see it, but your friend next to you won't be able to necessarily view it because their perspective, their viewpoint, their consciousness is limited. Heightened self-awareness allows for more permissibility to accept things outside of your realm of perspective. And if you have any base, you know, undercurrent that is still stoically inside of you, it disallows for you to absolutely be able to witness something outside of that. Now, what's interesting with that, even when you come in contact with ETs, and I say this all the time, people were saying, you know, how come some people can? It's not a competition. You see what you're meant to see, and you see what you can handle. I want to state that too, because as I've talked about in my Breaking the Code video of seeing reptilians, I've also denoted to you that with even this perspective of seeing ETs, you are unable to witness things that would cause you mental instability and a physical harm. Because once you come in contact with beings with the heightened awareness, you must be in the frequency of it so that your mind can handle it. Because what your mind can't handle could kill you. Okay, that is why many of the beings that are coming in contact with some of these more quantified reptilians, as far as some of the, you know, the straight up draconians, why some can actually stand in their midst is because they're hybrid with them. So even their biological setup, even if they're not consciously aware of these beings previous to meeting their brethren, they are still physically in alignment with those type of beings. Okay, now you take those who aren't hybrid from that type of species, and you take a limited a limited awareness of their presence. You put a draconian in front of an average person who isn't aware that they exist, they will have a heart attack or a stroke and die. It's been noted, it's been documented. It is why these beings are not on the surface of the planet to the degree that they were in ancient times. Remember, in ancient times, if you look in hieroglyphs, if you look on the Mayan temples, if you look in even the Sumerian tablets, you will see walking bipedal reptilians walking amongst the people. Why is that? Is because those people didn't have, there wasn't a hidden agenda. They walked amongst the people, these beings, because they never hid themselves. So they grew up knowing and understanding. Like I told you about the tribe, the crocodile tribe. Someone said, how come they're not afraid of the crocodilians? You know, I call draconians the crocodilians. Why aren't they afraid of them? Because when you've been aware for generations, that is inside of you intrinsically. There is an inner understanding that these beings exist generationally. So it's in your codons. It's in your very blueprint of who you are, yourself, your awareness. Just like ants come and are born and know exactly what to do to be able to collect, you know, food or need for the nest. It's the same thing with people who have that unbroken knowledge, the lack of amnesia. They are aware that these beings exist. It isn't frightening for them because they've always known. There's probably some worshiping maybe, because depending on what these beings interaction with those people are, but there isn't that intrinsic fear. Now, because the crocodilians and many of the other subterranean reptilians have not been on the surface of the planet overtly for now a couple hundred years, the average person wouldn't be aware of their presence, and it would cause them disharmony in their spirit, in their mind, in their basic physicality to come in contact with these type of beings. So that is why you will see certain people witness UFOs and others not. But now, to a heightened degree, there are massive sightings of, again, we're getting spikes of sightings in DC, in parts of Delaware, and in Pennsylvania, which has not been noted before. Remember, we have intellists who give us, you know, I've been part of the UFO community for many years now. So, you know, we have our own personal intellists. So, you know, we know when we get spikes, basically from all the people that we know are seeing and witnessing and taking pictures. Now, we're also getting heightened amount of UFO activity in Brazil. Brazil has always been known to get activity, but we're getting it more on the coast. So Brazil is getting a heightened amount of activity on the coast, towards, I think it was it over in Sao Paulo, over by Sao Paulo, if I'm not mistaken. We're also getting spikes of activity, as you saw in New York, but that was more Project Blue Beam. Blue Beam. Okay, so what was going on with the blue light in New York was more had to do with more of the blue beam. Now, many years ago, if you remember, there was a gentleman who made a prediction that we were going to see a whole bunch of triangular ships in New York City. I forgot his name. He was clowned off of the internet, but he was right. He made a prediction that on a particular date we were going to see massive sightings in New York City, and on that day there were massive lights in the sky on that day that we considered to be UFOs. Now, I forgot his name. I probably have it in my archive somewhere. He made that prediction. He was one of the contactees who made that, and a lot of people talked about him because they wanted, like, you know, people. My squirrels are so mischievous. They see me on the phone. They want me to get off the phone. Um, my, what was I saying? Oh, they clowned him off because people had wanted more. Like, it wasn't just enough to see lights. He said and he predicted there would be lights in the sky. So he made the prediction, but it wasn't enough for them. They wanted so much more. Hey, Ninth Realm. So, like I said, you will only see from the perspective of your self-awareness, of your heightened awareness. And because most people are raising in consciousness, humanity in itself is raising in vibration. That is why you're getting more witnessing of UFOs daily. Where one was unable to witness a UFO, now they're able to see UFOs left and right, and different types. Now, remember, there are different types of UFOs, and I kind of went into that. There's sentient UFOs, there's reversed engineered UFOs that are governmental, there are UFOs that are grown in a kind of like mushrooms or plants. There are those UFOs that are biologically connected to the cosmonauts that are actually navigating them. There are UFOs that are definitely aquatic based, and many of the UFO fleets to the greatest degree, are all underneath the water, the majority of them. So that's why you see in the sky. Could you imagine what's in the oceans? The deep oceans are not explored to the degree that we could possibly do. And a lot of the energetic waves, the sonic weaponry that's being used underneath by the military with a lot of their submarines is being used. The sonic weapons are being used not only to disrupt the some of the things that their other warships or what have you, but it's also to disrupt the UFOs that they're witnessing when they're underwater. All these no, you never get as much intel from the submarines. How many people that are Marines? Now you rarely hear Marines. I think we only had 2 intellists. I don't know why Marines are less likely to tell us more about what they see under the seas, but we've only had, I think, and maybe some of the maybe someone in their UFO community, you can tell me better, because I've only known of 2 intellists that were Marines that talked about witnessing not only sorry about that. Not only were they witnessing mermaids and mer families and other types of aquatic life that they've never documented ever, and it won't be documented because these are things that, again, if you were aware of, you would realize that there's been a lot of smoke and mirrors regarding the sea life that's being depicted in some of your, your archives, or what we know to be even on Animal Planet. They don't even talk about a lot of these things. So I think the only time we've heard and tell us some of the 2 Navy men that I know talked about the mer families, and not only that they were mer families, that their migrational pattern of the mermaids, they migrated with the whales and the pilot whales and the dolphins. They went in the migrational pattern of the whales. So if the whales were migrating to warmer waters, they would travel along with the dolphins, and the dolphins almost seem like what we have as dogs. As pets, the dolphins with the mer family were considered to be like the pets, not pets, but like the companions of the mer family. And they said they were riding around with like man-made spears and nets, and they had the way that they looked was very similar to that of what you consider to be like what was that movie? Just Like Water was that movie, Just Like Water, something like that. Okay. And they traveled along again with the pilot whales, the sperm whales. The sperm whales were mainly how the sperm whales, they usually traveled with the little ones, with the little people. So it was very interesting. It was very interesting how that intel came out. I thought that was probably the most fascinating, to talk about the mind, and also to talk about that he said that they had items that you could only get from land, meaning that these mermaids, or these mer people, the Shape of Water, thank you, these mer people were known to do trade in South Africa with the African people. So I know, because you hear a lot of the tribes talk about doing trades, as far as like spears or type of things that they take from the surface of the land, and they trade with their aquatic families. Okay, we know there's some sort of relationship there. Okay, Aquaman kind of gets into that a little bit, kind of touches on that, like Waterworld, yeah. So we know that there's UFOs, but there too, Intel has said that there were UFOs cloaking themselves in the water, and when they decloaked themselves, they had actual manta rays stuck, like sticking, because they were like the kinetic. I'm assuming they were attracted to the kinetic energy. They had like hundreds of what is it, manta rays stuck to the top, like on top of the craft, like swimming on top of the craft, like hovering over it. Isn't that interesting? So we have crafts that are also traveling inside of the underneath the waterways. Now that is interesting, because a lot of times, even when we get pictures, or people will send pictures, there's some sightings. And I also detailed that by my parents' house. Many of you have known me for a couple of years now. You know that my parents had a beautiful lake by their house, which you go down by the dock. But many of the initial contact that I was getting was coming from, and my mother, my matrix mom, actually witnessed one of these beings coming out of the waterways. I remember, I think I did a live. I was doing a live at my parents' house, and under the lake, there would always be lights glowing in the waterways, and I would lose memory. I would just lose, like I would see it and just wake up in my bed and not remember it. But my mother, one time I went live, I think some of you remember this. My mother, when I went live one time, because you know my mom is like, she knows a lot of stuff, but she does not really, she doesn't relate to the verbiage we use. Like, she's a Caribbean woman, so she kind of knows some of this stuff is true, because in the Caribbean you see really weird things. I mean, you see supernatural things quite often, more so than I would think, unless you're in the South, you see in the South. But my mother, when I was on live that time, she said she saw a being, a tall, quote unquote, carbon being, tall, walking between the houses, because their houses are far apart, but you can see shadowing, because you know how you have in their house they had like lights that would turn on when they would give movement, and remember there's deers and everything there too. So the light turned on and all she saw was a big tall carbon being walking between the houses, between her house and the other house, and she freaked out. She freaked out and woke up my father. Tony, there's somebody walking between the houses. It's Dell. They got to my mom and dad. They're so cute. They're so cute. She freaked out. She was like, what the heck is that? And she told me about it. She was like, I didn't know what that was. She was like, I thought it was one of those things you were talking about. And she said he came from the lake, because there was like a little walkway. It was beautiful. You know, my parents aren't there. My father passed away since, you know that. Many of you were there at the house when I was there and I did the lives. Aw, thank you, Pavel. Thank you. Love what you do. Love who you are. I appreciate that. I love you too. Thank you. Yeah, so she freaked out about that, but she witnessed it. So, you know, sometimes when you think I'm cuckoo for Cocoa Puff, some people think that some of these things you can make up until they witness it. So that's where I get a lot of times nervousness when people hang out with me, because they're afraid. My friends aren't. My friends from back in the days already know what it is, because they already get to witness things based on being my friend. You know, because my self-awareness is so heightened, I will share a collective. My vibration will permeate onto my homies, just so they witness a lot of the things that I see. It's hard for them not to, because we're hanging out. You know what I mean? So I wanted to talk about that, because again, I want to repeat this again. You see to the level, you witness to the level of what and who you are. So if you are witnessing UFOs, it's because you're in the frequency of that UFO that you're witnessing. You can only witness to what you are. Okay. So, and a lot of times now we're going to go into we'll dip into another conversation, which we kind of talked about on Aquarius Rising Ninth Gate. And just a sidebar for anyone who's waiting for Aquarius Ninth Gate, remember, this is my 17th day of my fast. I'm past my halfway mark. I'll continue the show back when after my fast. It's very difficult for me to stay up late, but I do have a show tonight with Offset. Big up to Offset. I'll be on Offset's show. She's interviewing me tonight on her show as a guest. So you can check me out on Offset's show. I think it's at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m. my time, Eastern. I think so. So you can check me out tonight if you want to hear some of the conversation. Big up to Offset. It's at 8 o'clock p.m. I think I'll share the link. You know, I'm all over the way. I'll get the link and I'll share it with you guys, okay? If I remember. Just remind me. So, you know, and also remember that it'll be on Offset's platform. I'm not doing it from my platform. She's doing it from hers. How do you spell AUSET? I'll post it. Maybe I'll post the link in here. I'll ask Offset for the link and I'll post it in here so you guys can check it out. So again, you see to the degree of what you are. Now, there are many different types of beings here. I mean, literally when they lifted, we've been on a quarantine. Who's that? Anyway. Yeah, there are many different types of species and beings here that are coexisting, but we used to be under quarantine. And while we were under quarantine, many beings were disallowed. There was a contract that many beings were disallowed from intercepting with us or interacting with us. And it's for a good reason, because if you're vulnerable. It's like having a ant farm, and the ants are totally unaware that they're living inside of a glass perimeter where they're limited, but in their world they're building, they're doing, they're being, they are unaware that they're limited in any way. It's the same likewise with humanity in itself. um um Thank you. Osset's channel is called Lucy. Thank you, Isha. Thank you, I appreciate it. What was I saying? Yeah, many different beings uh, were disallowed for interacting with us because we were unaware, like fresh babies. And if you interacted with us, you would incept on our conscious state of being. You would disrupt our peace of mind, kind of like that. So, you guys keep talking. I guess you can see my freckles more since I've been fasting, right? Um, so, um, lucid living, absolutely. So, now that the quarantine's been over, many of the star families that have their own hybrids on a family, which many of you and I am, that have been hybrid and seeded here, are now in more contact with their star families. So now many of you are having dreams of being on ships. Many of you are dreaming of actually co-piloting ships, or riding your ships, or driving your ships. Many of you are starting to remember who and what you are. Some of you are remembering other worlds. I remember watching Doc Stickler. Big up to Doc Stickler. Such a cutie. He just had a son who's beautiful. So Doc Stickler years ago is one of the reasons I had to reach out to Docs, because he used to be on my page. And big up to Doc Stickler. You hear his music sometimes on here. He sings a rosary song. But I remember Docs had put something on his platform. This is years ago. He'll remember this. He doesn't, I have to remind him of this all the time. So Docs had on his platform, he was just talking. He wasn't even aware he was having some sort of celestial memory. But he was on, he was like, listen, y'all, I ate a whole bag of Cheetos and I fell asleep, and I woke up with like 3 moons and like on a planet that was red. He was like, I didn't know where I was. I heard him say that and I was like, oh, that's a memory. I don't know if some of you remember that. I was like, that's a memory. I had to reach out. I was like, yo, it's Ox. I was like, that is so a memory. And after he had, now listen, after he had that one dream, this is how awakening happens. He had one dream. He wasn't on that before. He had one dream. Then, hey, Amaya, hey, Amira. He had one dream, and then all of a sudden he spiked. That's when he went on fasting from sex for a year. That's why I made the challenge to Nature Not and all these other so-called conscious beings. Doc Stickler went and abstained from sex for a year. He started to meditate. He started to change his diet. It was an awakening, and it all was the catalyst was that one. He said Cheetos. It was so cute. He said he had a bag of Cheetos, fell asleep, and then he was I thought it was the cutest thing in the whole wide world. And he thought it was the Cheetos that kind of invoked these dreams. Big up to Doc Stigler. And ever since then, he's been like a metaphysical, like a meditation. Now he does meditation groups. This is the same hip hopper who was eating Cheetos and probably smoking blunts every day. I don't know. Don't hate me, Docs, when I say. And now he's got a beautiful son who's awake and aware. He's teaching meditation. He abstained from sex from a year, and I know because I was around dogs physically. And I'm not saying I'm the bomb.com, but I can. So if he could be around me and abstain from sex, it's all good in the hood. Oh, it was so wonderful. Now that's some Bobby Hemmett-ish, yes. It was so funny. So that's what I'm talking about, the spike in awareness. And then after that, he was able to accept other aspects of consciousness, and awareness. His spike in awareness, he would see UFOs. He would be able to witness it. Part of some of you seeing some of the groups, the ET groups, the reptilians, some of that has to do with your own reptilian DNA inside of you that you were totally unaware, and maybe watching a video of mine or somebody else's allowed for you to know they existed, and then all of a sudden you start to see the eyes that look cat-like or reptilian-like, or you start to see someone's girth change, or you start to witness people's skin, getting into layers, like weird layers. Sometimes you start to hear people's vocal patterns change, or sometimes it makes you hyper hyper clear audio or clear audio or clear sentient. Okay, it makes you much more hyper in awareness of other overlaying dimensions on top of you. Okay, for some of you to be able to travel with me to do the timeline jump, you had to be in heightened awareness just for you to accept that we could choose to go in and out of different timelines. That already states that your awareness is spiked, because the average person doesn't even know that that even is a plausibility or possibility. And even in this timeline, which is really interesting, is there's this character. I'm gonna get him on my show. I think he's fascinating. He is like, I was almost shocked he existed in this timeline. His name is something Pilot, Don Pilot, something the Pilot. He's like a astrologer. What is his name? Dylon the Pilot or something? He curses, smokes, and everything. I don't know what his name is. Hey, Dollface. I forgot what Dylon the Pilot, or what's his name? No, it's Dylon. It's Dylon the Pilot. Something, the Pilot Man. D'Lo, right? Jay Flower, you know what is D'Lo the Pilot? D'Lo the he didn't exist in my other timeline. Listen, all of a sudden he starts showing up on my feed. I don't know who this man is. I turn on his feed. Oh my gosh. I was like, where did he come from? I was amused. I was like, I gotta get him on the show. He's always smoking. He's talking about, but this man's knowledge is sick. Like, listen, I could vet out anyone. His behavior is interesting. I mean, he's cursing, but his intel is phenomenal. Oh my, the flight boss. He was talking. He was like, yeah, motherfuckers. And then he was like, yeah, but and then he starts going Chiron and how the squares happen. I was like, this dude. I was like, where did you come from? Never heard of you in my life. Didn't even know you existed. He just popped out of the left field. That's a whole new timeline. He wasn't in my timeline before, right, Emma? I was appreciative. I was listening to him. He was so on point. I had to filter out all the mother effins, and he's a character. I want to get him on my show. And he's doing it all from his basement. He is very interesting. I was very intrigued, and it's rare that somebody kind of catches my attention like that. But he's like knowledgeable. I mean, in astrology, and I know astrology is from being a party to that realm. But my gosh, and he does music too. I listened to him for like 3 hours before I went to sleep. I was like, I'm feeling this. What is his name? Dolo? Is it Dolo? Dolo? Yeah, I just, his language is interesting, but his intel is on point. So anyway, I'm gonna see if Dolo. I'll kick it out to him. If anybody on here knows Dolo, just tell him that Flurber wants him on her show. I would like to kick off the fast and bring Dolo in. Tell Dolo Flurburn is quite fascinated by his vibration. Tell him to come on in. I'd be interested to do an interview with him just to get where that comes from. That's a star seed. He's seeded from something. That's not because his behavioral pattern, listen to how nonchalant he does it. His behavioral pattern doesn't match that of someone who's like, these so-called astrologers and gurus who are just so perfect, and musics and that, blah, blah, blah. He comes from a certain background, which makes me think he's more intrinsically that of what he shares. Like, he is that. So he's seeded from that because it comes too naturally. It isn't something like, it's effortless. Like when he's talking about it, it's like you think that he's going to be all bonical, he's going to be all ebonics, and no, he'll talk all kinds of, all kinds of things, and then all of a sudden, like this intel, this so on point intel comes out, and I'm like, where'd that come from? It doesn't even match the vibration of who he is. It means he's naturally like that, and it means he's been seeded. That's a natural being. That's one of those beings, one of these star seeds. He's probably, his vibration is like that of the Sirians, the Sirius people. The Sirius have that kind of behavior. Like they have that kind of off chart kind of behavior. Like it doesn't match because we have these, pseudo conceptions of what people who do astrology should be and how they should act. So he acts like someone who's from Sirius. He does. The Sirius beings act like that. That's one of their one of their dispositions is off, like they're off, they're like so humanly but unhumanly, kind of like that. Yeah, he's on point. I want to get Dolo. That's his name, Dolo. I listened to him for like 2 hours. I was fascinated. I was like, all right, Dolo, we need to get you on the show. I'm interested to witness that consciousness from a perspective of interviewing him. Very much so. He will pinpoint and tell you exactly where he's from. Oh, Celestial, I would love to know. I would love to know. Flight Boss. Yeah. I was listening. People on the feed were laughing. He does he like after he does, like he gets a donation or he hears something or he gets excited. He goes he like a Michael Jackson. I thought that was so adorable. I thought that was so cute. I was like, you are not from my original timeline. You just came in this timeline. This man did not exist in my other timeline. I'm telling you, he just came here. So I'm interested in interviewing him. If any of you are on, just tell him. I'll reach out to him. But I would really, I'm fascinated. I am, for sure. That's what he says, for sure. Flight Boss is on point. Absolutely quirky, fun. I like people who are not so aesthetically like perfect. Like what I mean is that because there are these, there is this wave of, I don't want to call it fakeness, but it's falsehood. It's like it is a wave of making something seem like so perfect or so like so zenned out. It's not realistic. It because people come in these avatars as they are, changing that and morphing it into a package, like a corporate package, to make it more appeasing to the populace. That's unauthentic. That's why I say he's authentic. He isn't hiding who he is. Like even that woohoo, like check out Dolo the pilot, anyone. Check him out on YouTube. I was amazed. I mean, if you can get past the motherfuckers and so on and so on, I mean, that's just personality. But I thought he was probably the most authentic astrologer I've seen thus far. Because it was so on point. I was like, it just, I know I could go on days and days. I'm just amazed because this is a new being that I've come upon in my new timeline. But the same goes for UFOs. And what I was going to say previous to being enamored by this new being called Dolo the pilot, what I was going to state before that is also be aware that you will be able to witness ships that you are manning. Listen to me. I'm going to repeat that again. Where's my water? You will be able to witness UFOs that you yourself, your consciousness is manning. What do I mean by that? A lot of times, you are all witnessing ships that you yourself futuristically are riding, and you're witnessing yourself looking at the past version of yourself. Meaning that the future aspect of yourself, the more evolved aspect of yourself, is coming back to witness yourself in your ancestral form. So when you're witnessing a ship and you're able to see it, a lot of times the first thing I will say to you is that it's you viewing yourself from a higher perspective. And I only mean higher, meaning you transcended already and you're witnessing your own self as an ancestor. Isn't that freaky? Go figure that. And when you start getting into quantum physics, if you start watching, what is that movie? Interstellar. Okay, movies like Interstellar. What's another movie that gives you that concept? There's a couple movies that kind of touch on the concept. It's not a concept, it's part of quantum physics, quantum entanglement. When you get into being able to understand that time doesn't exist, that's just a perimeter to keep solidifying physicality, that past, present, and future are all overlapping. So yesterday is today. tomorrow is today. It's all in our awareness. All that matters is what you're experiencing at this moment. Our conversation now is all that matters because that's all that's actually tangible. Yesterday and today are just concepts, you know, a memory of what was and a concept of what could be. Okay? So, Fleur, I'm about to make all of the men that are attracted to me fight it out to see who is truly worthy. Celestial, be careful. You don't want them to die. Don't let them battle that out. You know, it's unnecessary. You know which one is more worthy of you. You don't necessarily, you know, this is not the, you know, what is it called? The gauntlet when they're going in and fighting for the queen. You know what I mean? Be careful with that. Yeah. You don't want them hurting themselves. You know who is most in sync with you. You know, if a male is in sync with you, alchemically he's right for you, mindset, intellectually he's matching you, you know, pheromone wise he's matching you. It's unnecessary to have them battle. You don't want to hurt them, and you don't want that karmic debt if something happens to one of them. Okay, because it's unnecessary. You choose and you disallow them from competing with you for too long, because in that. Okay, I'm back. What I was saying is that just if you know who you are who's most appeasing to you, that's the gentleman you choose, and let the other one go, so that he isn't waiting for you in vain. You know, what's that song by? I love that song by you know, oh, I forgot. I don't want to wait in vain for your love. Oh, Bob Marley. Bob Marley. Sorry, it took me a moment. I'm fasting. This is my 7th day of my fast. My mind is a little waverly. Yeah, waiting in vain. Listen to that song. You don't want to do that. I know what it's like to love someone and wait, and it isn't a good feeling. Okay? I've loved someone and waited, and then I had to realize that waiting is torture, and it's unnecessary, because if I'm a choice for them, I would never be waiting, right? You know, because who you choose first is the choice that is meant to be, okay? And then you rock that out. Let the other ones go. Let them have their lives, and let them be with people who actually, you know, want them. And you know, um, couldn't wait anymore. Yeah, I've waited. It's torture. It's unnecessary though. You don't wait. You live your life. There's nothing to wait for. What's for you comes to you. I've learned that lesson. If you have sex with him and you get an UTI, yeast infection, or BV, well, if he's giving you, you know, metaphysical viruses, you know, because those are all part of, you know, sexually transmitted demons, you know, those are all coming from being with men that are out of sync with you, who are not pheromonically harmonic with you, because even the smell of them, or their, I'm gonna get a little graphic for a second, make sure the babies aren't here. Even the smell of their semen should be appeasing to you, okay? Same likewise of your yoni to them. That's when you're pheromonically harmonic with someone, when the scent of them, it just drives you forward. It's appeasing, it's appealing. You know, I don't want to say that, but I got to keep it real with you, sea stars and sun stars. Okay, it's that's how you know you're alchemically in sync with them. The scent of everything, they're extra, what they exude, as far as, especially in their personal private parts. That scent, whether they're sweaty, it doesn't matter. That scent in it. That scent in itself, if it's appealing, there means they're pheromonically harmonic with you. That's a good sign. But they could be pheromonically harmonic and sick too. So you got to be careful, because they could be all kinds of perfect for you genetic wise, but they could be all kinds of imperfect for you intellectual wise, spiritually, and all other things. So because he has one doesn't mean he's right in every other way. You know, he could be, you know, he could be off mentally. He could be off otherwise. Same with females. Do I really have to smell his semen? I told you I was gonna get graphic. I'm sorry for that. You know I'm Creole. Please forgive me for my lack of sexual, sexual I don't have any of those like taboos. So I'm sorry. It's way worse when you meet me in person. So I'm being very kind on the internet. I'm very, I'm very, when I say culturally, that is my stamp. I'm very Creole. We're very sexually receptive to open. There isn't any hiding who we are. We take part of who I am sexually is who I am intellectually, who I am physically. It's all intertwined. That's all. So I'm c'est bon cher. Thank you. I don't mean to offend in no way. I don't. Absolutely. Just, I tell you that because sometimes people, these are things your auntie is supposed to tell you, your mother, your father is supposed to say to you. These are things that your family is supposed to share with you, these conversations, because, I tell you because, I'm more seasoned and, I'm over that hump already, with competition and with, things when I was younger, who's who, what, it's over. I tell you from the perspective I know. So I tell you, if he smells divine, he is divine to you genetically. Okay, that's who you mate with. I love the scent of my mate. I do. I love any man that I've mated with. I love his scent. It drives me to want to be with him. That's how you know he's alchemically for you. It makes me. It makes me more appeasing to him as well. So in my scent, if men are all in your yoni or they smell your hair when you just shower and they can't get enough of it, that's because he's pheromonically harmonic with you. That's it. That's it. I don't like colognes and all that stuff. It makes me sick. I don't like colognes and, all that pheromone, those alien pheromones on men. I love men the way they smell. And that's how I know I can mate with him. If he smells right for me, I know I can mate with him. I do. It's my mating season. I'm fasting. I'm not having sex with anyone. So let's keep this real, because people are like, she's talking about having sex with all these men. It hasn't happened. I had 3 boyfriends my whole life. So it's not that. So please don't listen to some of these other sea stars. They make platforms on me, putting up pretty pictures of me. Thank you for putting up pretty pictures and flattering pictures of me. I appreciate it. Saying that I'm some sort of succubus, that I'm enticing men, I'm having sex with a host of men, is zero. I come from families who are married for 60 years. I wouldn't, even if I wanted to be that kind of woman, it would be very difficult for me. I've had 3 boyfriends. I have been married once, and I had children by that one man. So when I share this with you, it's coming from a perspective of someone who's been in a long-term relationship long enough. And when I love someone, I love them. I just love them. That's all. So, don't listen to some of these stars who make up lies because they're mad. I don't know why they're mad. If they were having good sex and they were being loved by their mates and having healthy partnerships, I wouldn't be the first thing that they talk about. Because if I'm having healthy sex and I'm being loved and adored by the man that I'm with, I don't have time talking about another sea star's love or sexual life. I just don't. I'm too busy enjoying the elation of my mate and wanting more from him. What, what do I want talking about another sea star's sexual proprieties? You know what I mean? Get over it. Anyway, we're talking about, let me go back. We're going on to, you know what, maybe I should jump on. This is conversation we should have on IG, because it's supposed to be about UFOs. Some people stay on this, they'll be like, where'd the conversation go left? We're talking about semen and all kinds of stuff. Let's not talk about that. Anyway, family, that's all I'm going to share with you on this today. I'll probably jump on IG real quick, because this is more of an IG conversation. We can kind of finish that over there, because I don't want to bring this to this platform. This is supposed to be talking about UFOs. I love sea stars. I love when we do it, because this is what we would do in real life. But they're talking about musty balls. Positive queen. Don't get me started on here. This is hilarious. Yeah, I'm going to go on Instagram. So long as what time is it? I can go on Instagram for a little bit. So join me on Instagram right now. I'll jump on there with you for you a little bit so we can talk a little seedy. I don't want to do this on here. It's like we're in our parents' house. Like we're in the mothership. This isn't a conversation for the mothership. We're going to jump on our little pilot planes, like Dolo. We're going to jump on these little, mini ships to go have our conversations privately. This is not the place. All right. So I'll join you on IG right now. I'll kick on real quick. I got an appointment at 11. So we'll join there. We'll have a conversation about musty balls, because somebody wants to talk about that. And come over to IG. All right, family? Thanks for joining. And again, if you're seeing UFOs in the sky, it's a testament of who you are and actually what you've been raised in consciousness to see. All right? I love you.